big return ultimate, unstoppable force as well, but he goes down. A double kill for Raheen. Flash forward from APA. He wants to clean house, but he goes golden. Garika's in the back line, and the team is gone. Just like that. Poof! There's a magic trick.
This is a turn fight for Barrage. PCL getting focused now. Strampus now flashing over the wall. Winthrop misses. Strampus goes just nuts and picks up the triple kill.
Again, this is disgusting. Tuesday, please forgive me for this.
God, that was, oh my goodness.
Mine, flash.
Oh my god.
Alright, that's the two-man A-bomb coming out from the Silas.
Hello and welcome everybody to Unified Grand Prix Tier 1 Amateur Tournament, where we find ourselves in round 2 of the losers bracket, the last chance for these teams to guarantee a spot in the Proving Ground circuit coming up. I am your host for today, and I know I'm sorry I cannot be him. Rafa is taking a break today. I will be filling in. You can call me Kangas, but I do still have Alk Battery on the desk with me. Alk, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm a little bit sad that I don't have my homie from Utah, but you know, I hope that he has a speedy recovery. I hope we get to see him on Monday. I'm really glad to have you though on. You're definitely a good second.
Second string for sure. That's my specialty. That's what I'm known best for, honestly. But we do also have the chance to have a very special guest with us today. His first time here on the UGP with us. We have Tim Seven Houston. You may know him from Oracle's Elixir. You may know him from Twitter. He's got lots of content. One of the only content creators in the Academy scene, the hero of Academy, to represent the Academy teams that are still in this tournament, finding themselves both in the losers bracket. Tim, I haven't done you justice with that though. So give me a little more insight into who you are and what your background is.
Sure. Well, I'm excited to be here. Really happy to have the chance to talk about these teams. I created my intro to the scene was creating oracleselixir.com, a stats website back in 2015. From there, did a lot of content creation. I've worked with some different teams around the world in different capacities, either directly or indirectly. And just, I've been following NA talent, especially over the past couple of years, and trying to invest a lot into the Academy side, and now getting involved in amateur and kind of seeing what's there and trying to tell the stories of these players and just get to celebrate the NA talent that's here and hopefully play into the opportunity to raise more of them up and have them eventually make an influence in the LCS in years to come.
Well, we appreciate the work that you do, Tim. You're shining a much-needed light on a lot of these younger players, and it's awesome to see your YouTube content, your Twitter content. So if you haven't already, go follow Tim on Twitter right now. Check him out. Check out his YouTube. Subscribe there as well. But tonight, we have a couple really exciting matches because, as we said already, both Academy teams find themselves in the losers bracket right now. They have to get a win to guarantee a spot in the Proving Ground circuit coming up. So let's just catch everybody up to speed on the games coming up today. We have TSM Academy with Winthrop, the rematch that we already saw earlier this week, and then No Org versus CLG Academy. Alk Battery, let's get your first thoughts on the TSM Academy versus Winthrop matchup. What are we excited for here?
Oh man, there's a lot of things to be excited for. We got to see them yesterday. We got to see TSM versus this Sola Fide roster, and they ended up going down 0-2. But I think this time around, TSM have a lot that they've worked on, and hopefully they've kind of sharpened and kind of made it a little bit tighter on the ship there versus this Winthrop, because they already have played against these guys going into a full 3-game set, and I'm hopeful that these guys have at least done their homework.
Multiple Baron steals during that series as well. So I don't want to throw any more shade at Babbitt. Just hit your smite button, man. But let's talk about Winthrop a little bit. Tim, talk to me about this team. What are we excited for, just briefly based on what we saw last time around between these two?
Yeah, I think Winthrop has been a great story. They're a team that I think coming into amateur, I don't know how many people would have had them, in this tier of amateur. I think there are a lot of other teams that we were really excited about. But Winthrop making it this far and doing this well, obviously they did take a game off TSM last time. I played this series pretty close. They managed to take down C9 amateur and make it to this stage of the tournament. Now they're one series win away from getting into Proving Ground. So really exciting to see what they can do, whether they're able to change the result this time around. And continue to make their path forward and keep climbing kind of the ladder of what we would expect from them and where they're heading.
And now both of these teams played on the secondary stream yesterday, so we'll have a moment to catch everybody up to speed on what happened on that stream in case you didn't check it out. But before that, I just want to give a quick update on No Org versus CLG Academy, because that's going to be the second match of the day. So let's just cover that real briefly here. We'll just go in that same order. Alk Battery, When you look at this matchup, no Org coming in from the amateur side, what's your SparkNotes version of what we can expect from this match from them?
Oh man, topside focus. We're looking at King Viper over there, kind of just taking control of that entire lane. We've got Onda, who's doing a fantastic job, and obviously the no import slot 5fire, King of Amateur himself. This entire team has really just kind of fired up in the last half of Tier 2, completely running the bracket on every single tournament they've taken a part of. And for Tier 1, I don't think they're going to stop. This is, I think, a little bit of a hiccup going up against Zeus Gaming and taking that loss. And I think they're going to have a lot of fire underneath them to kind of get back into that top spot, because they are our #1 reigning North American amateur team.
A lot of players that have been on LCS and Academy rosters as well. Tim, SparkNote's version of CLG Academy, though, what do we got for this team?
Yeah, this is a team that's really kind of struggled to figure out who they are and who their players are, for one thing. The entire CLG org has been kind of trying to figure out what's going on with visas and moving players up and down, and they're working on a roster iteration now that is still trying to find its footing. But they've got RJS back down, they've got Griffin is coming back from the LCS team, and really I think they're just trying to figure out who they are a little bit. But they also seem to have more of that kind of top side of the map focus, working a little bit more around their solo lanes and letting the bot lane kind of be the weak side of the map. And this tournament, I think, for them is really about determining, how they can play, what kind of style they are, and getting some synergy together.
I'm excited to talk a little bit more in depth about just how exciting that matchup is when we look at the top sides of the map later on today. But now let's bring it back to the match that's coming up next here. We got Winthrop versus TSM Academy. And again, let's catch everybody up to speed on how each of them got to these to this loser's bracket. Battery, I'll give you a chance to catch everybody up. Winthrop, what was their journey like? How did their games go yesterday in particular? And what does that mean for today?
Yeah, for Winthrop, they actually ended up obviously losing to TSM, and this was a team, I think, like Tim said a little bit earlier on, that I don't think a lot of people would have expected Winthrop to make this deep of a run, much less even coming into play-ins, right? Versus Revival, these were definitely the underdogs, but were able to take it after a long series. They then go up against TSM, they lose there, and their fight against C9 Amateur last night, who were the ones to knock out Barrage, our second seed, is looking really, really tough to try and beat. They got really good early leads, but ends up being that Saskio and his ultimates just keep sealing Baron, and after a few more one-team fights, Winthrop were able to kind of just tie it in. I'm looking for this team now, when they're coming up against TSM yet again. What are the adaptations that we see for the series?
Tim, any insights into that in particular? What adaptation do you think Winthrop should be looking at based on what they had shown us yesterday? Is it still just keep playing Jinx if it's banned, go to secondary AD carry, or is there anything else that they need to be looking at?
Yeah, I think of the two teams in this matchup, Winthrop are the ones that have less pressure on them to change something and to adapt, I think. Yes. It's really more about continuing to do what they're comfortable with, continuing to do what they're good at, and taking any opportunities that TSM give them and punishing those opportunities. If TSM throws something to them, they got to catch it and be ready to catch any throws there. So I think, continuing to work with Jinx, if TSM allow them to have it, that's a good move. Doxo's got some different champions he can play. If they're going to get the Zoe, let him play the Zoe, but he can do a lot of other things as well. Just keep doing kind of a similar game plan. And it's really more, I think, TSM are the ones who should be expected to be a little more flexible, and who should, I think, given that they're the Academy team, have a little more pressure on them to do something different and to look, if they're going to win again, they got to win a lot more convincingly if they want to feel good about themselves. Yeah. So, but on the Winthrop side, I think, keep doing what you're doing and hopefully just tidy up the execution. And you probably feel like from last series, it was close enough that if a few more things broke your way, you might feel like you could take that one, right? So, I don't think they need to really make a big pivot.
Yeah, it really did come down to some of those later game team fights where it's like, once you're at that point, it really could go either way. It's just coming down to execution. But you already kind of segued us into TSM Academy. So let's now move our narrative over to how they looked yesterday. So catch us up to speed, Tim. What did we see from TSM Academy? Are they looking stronger going into this rematch, or are they looking shakier?
Well, I'd say if anything, they're looking a little shakier. I think we had some very long games yesterday, a lot of big epic objectives going back and forth, Barons and Elders, and I think both TSM and Solifide had opportunities to win the games, win the series, but couldn't put everything together at the right time. I think the real story I saw from TSM that throughout this tournament, honestly, is they've really tried to force a lot of plays they didn't need to force. They seemed like they were a little antsy, like hey, we're better than these guys. We just got to go out there and do it. And they go out and they make a big play. And somebody would try to force an engage without the rest of the team ready to follow up, or maybe they didn't have the right map posture for it. And I think the main thing from them is I want to see them lay back a little bit and, play with a little more control, play with a little more self-awareness, and also changing their champion pools, changing their draft a little bit to accommodate that and do a little more of what they're good at. Because I think they did try to play a style that hasn't been their most successful approach this far this season.
They've been playing a lot of this like lane rotational style, right? Like they're sending their bot lane to the Rift Herald and then sometimes just keeping them up there and just getting out of laning phase very early on, where yeah, typically you'd expect an academy team coming into this kind of tournament to say, no, we're just going to stat check our opponents in lane and just try and win through being better. But we'll see if they're able to do that here. It didn't go that well against Winthrop last time around. But now let's move it over to some more of the matches that happened yesterday. Now, Alec Battery, you in particular wanted to talk a little bit about CLG Academy versus Maryville University and just catch everybody up to speed on what happened in case they weren't able to tune into the Upsurge stream that was happening side by side with this stream on the Academy. So what did we see from CLG Academy yesterday that we can catch everybody up on?
Yeah, CLG, they took down a pretty big dark horse in amateur. This is the cream of the crop that we were talking about yesterday. Maryville are basically kind of one of those teams that we were expecting to do very well in a lot of these tournaments, but last night, it seemed like the CLG that maybe we've been hinted at, maybe we were promised of a really strong top side. They had a great performance against Chippies and Odd Orange, and I think if we get more of that kind of performance where Griffin is on fire and basically just completely ruined anything Odd Orange wanted to do on the map, if they're able to kind of play that style that we've been looking for, where RGS is empowered to be on the map and look to plays, we saw a lot of great synergy between him and Hooks, and I thought if this is what we get from CLG, if we can continue for that kind of identity to come out from them, then I think CLG Academy have a really strong kind of front foot going forward in Tier 1.
CLG Academy, this is such a rough position to be in because this is their first week playing as these 5 guys together. The first tournament showing that they have as this actual roster. They've had so many switches. Alec, you told me at one point, 9 different iterations of this roster this year?
They've got a couple of the amateur boys out there. Shout out to Keel Team Luke, but it's been so many players in this lineup.
Hey, they put in work earlier. And Tim, I know that I've actually heard you talk about this before, so I'm curious your thoughts before we get into, again, the matchup coming up here. CLG Academy, what's been your favorite, roster that they've put together so far? Is it these current 5, or were you more of a fan of the beginning of the year back when they had the likes of Keel Team Luke on them? Because it's hard to really tell what CLG is when they've had so many different looks.
Yeah, I think from my side of it, the current 5 they have is what they intended to have from the start of the year. And I'd say, even though there have been some ups and downs in their performance with that, I think this is what I prefer them to play with, and it's what I hope they will continue to be able to run with. It's the players they brought over from Oceania. It's RJS, who was intended to be in Academy but spent time in LCS, and there's been a little bit of drama about Pobelter coming down and RJS going up, and the reasons why CLG did that. But I think having RJS in Academy is good. That's where he should be and where he should be spending his time to kind of come back to the mid lane role and develop in that. I think having Griffin there as kind of a veteran presence to help with these guys is a good thing for him and a good opportunity for him to find his footing again and show that he, try to show that he can be LCS ready again. So this is the 5 that I'd like them to continue to play with, and I hope this tournament is an opportunity for them. Even if they don't win today, go into the next tournament and show that these are the players that can grow together and have a good year overall.
All right, well, we'll get more looks at CLG Academy and how these 5 function as a team later on today. I just wanted to give a little teaser for what's to come. But now, again, bringing us back to the next matchup here, Winthrop versus TSM Academy, the big rematch. We've been talking about, what to expect in this game, and there's one lane in particular that the two of you agreed you wanted to highlight. So I want to give us an opportunity to talk about these 2 players. We're going to see the matchup in about 15 minutes here. It's going to be Doxa going up against Sword in the mid lane. Now, the mid lane matchup, middle of the map, it can affect pretty much everything outside of, the jungler also affecting everything. So I'm going to give you the chance here, Alec, to go first. What player are you really looking at here in this head-to-head?
I mean, Doxa Diff. We saw in every single game that this guy has played that he's an absolutely insane mid lane player. I think his pool actually lends him to have a little bit of credence against Sword, who has had still some identity to find as to what kind of mid laner we want to see from him. He is, I think, against Sword, very, very strong. We even got to see him solo kill this guy in the laning phase for that first game coming out against these 2, and Doxa has been by far kind of the most impressive mid laner for his team, and most impressive player on this team just in general. I think that if there is ever a kind of a player to build around for Winthrop, it is absolutely Doxa. Now, obviously, Sasuke has his own kind of history all around CeeLo being a champion in himself, but Doxa is by far the most impressive laner on this team, and I hope going forward that we see a Winthrop that kind of goes around him, because this guy, when he wants to, he finds the plays that he needs to kind of open up the game. I don't think we've ever seen a absolutely terrible laning phase for him, and he is one of the guys that absolutely, if you give him resources, will just carry the game for you.
You mentioned that we had some footage, and we actually do have that solo kill footage up and available, so let's actually take a look at that right now. This was against Sword in the 1v1 last time around, and after this, Zoe was banned against him every time.
This is the last time we see Sword on Syndra, so just that is also, we've seen him on Azir since. Maybe the Zoe just traumatized him a little bit from this one.
Could be, but he also had this insane play. Tim, this one really surprised me when it came out, because like so many members of TSM are in this pit, but nope, gets the steal.
Yeah, it's one of those that, I mean, big objective steals are always exciting, and this was just a great, very exciting play, and was very influential in that game. And, you know, whenever you've got the spell book, you can do some creative things. You know, TSM should not really give that up, but they did. And Doxa punished him, take really good advantage of the opportunity, and good on him to make those kinds of big flashy plays and show that he is a real anchor for his team.
And I think that's, I like the way you put that, anchor for the team, because we were talking in the pre-show, and you're saying, when you think about Doxa, you're not seeing these, like, highlight reel footage, like crazy plays all the time. He has them, like that solo kill, like the Baron steal. They will appear, but most of the time, it's just that anchor. It's just the consistent performer that will show up for Winthrop when they need him. So cool to see. But now let's go over to the other side and talk about Sword. Alberto, you already hinted at this a little bit with the Syndra, but I'm going to give this one to Tim to start us off here. This guy's just stuck on Azir right now. So what's the story behind Sword?
Yeah, so Sword is a player that I think, especially TSM fans, were really excited to see. You know, a player who's very young and coming up and is kind of raw and needs a lot of opportunity to develop and be coached and learn. And I think, you know, we haven't seen the best things from him so far, but they're having some good moments. And he's played these 4 games of Azir after coming off that Syndra. He's showed a real inclination to pull the trigger. And he really wants to go in and make these plays and these big Azir shuffles. And, you know, we do that on other champions too, but playing this Azir, you can see whether it's in lane, whether it's in team fights, you know, he really wants to go in and make plays for his team and be a big difference and pop off kind of a player.
Sometimes it works really well, sometimes not. We actually have footage of one of those engages as well. So break me down, you know, what's Sword's, you know, there's weakness for sure, but there is also moments where he really pops off. So is he a coin flip player? Like, how do we really identify him?
You know, I'd say coin flip is always such a loaded term. I'd say, like, in this play, we see an example of he's ready to go in and make a play. He blew Tuesday's flash there. Hansar came in. He was kind of receiving the roam from Hansar. They make a play, and they ended up kind of winning the overall sequence here, getting the kill. And so, you know, that was an impressive play here, being able to go and do that and create something that, you know, that play didn't directly produce a kill, but it was the lead in to the rest of that sequence. So that's a positive sequence for him. And he showed in a lot of other games, or in instances within this game and other games, you know, in the team fights here, he's ready to go in and do the same kind of play, see a multi-man stack, go in on it, sweep a bunch of people in. The problem has been that pretty much anytime he sees this kind of 2 or 3 man stack that he thinks he can hit with his Azir shuffle, he goes in and he goes for it, and he doesn't necessarily seem to think about, is this one that's going to be an overall positive for the team, or am I just going to end up in a bad spot and I'm just trading myself for somebody? So they haven't really been clean plays. They haven't been consistently positive. There's been a little too much. And so I think he needs to settle down a little bit and be a little more selective about when he's going to pull the trigger on those plays. That's the main thing that I want to see from him, is kind of cleaning up those rough edges and not just trying to generate highlight reels. And it's okay if you have 10 bad ones, as long as you have 2 good ones that can go into your montage, right? Like, that's not, I don't want to see that anymore. I don't want to see that kind of play.
He's feeling a lot of pressure. I think that Sword he sees the situations that his team is in in certain states of the game, and he's like, if I make this play, I think even if I trade myself, maybe we win this team fight. We saw there that Cody Son was almost able to kind of clean up that fight. I think, like you said, it doesn't matter if he has 10 bad ones, as long as we get those 2 ones. If we have that patience, I think if we start to hone in on him, this guy is going to be a really awesome mid laner to watch.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, like, making plays like that don't necessarily turn out, this isn't really a bad thing overall. I'd much rather have a player, especially a developing player, who is willing to try those plays rather than somebody who's too cautious and it isn't going to pull the trigger unless he knows it's completely perfect. So this is something that I'd rather start with too much aggression and try to rein it in and control it rather than the opposite. So, don't take this as too much negativity on Sword. I think there is potential there. But, I think there's a reason that he's been able to play 4 games in a row of Azir, and they aren't banning it against him yet. So.
Yeah, sharpening the sword is what Alkbatter had said earlier, and I like that analogy for this one. I think it's also reflected in the stats that we were looking at. Like, he is still hitting damage per minute. He is still hitting kill percentage for the team. It's just the KDA that's really the big difference between these two players. Even like CS per minute, very, very close. Like, these are very similar stats across the board, except for just Sword's dying more because he's going for those crazy kind of plays. So I think I agree with what you're both saying. If Sword just reins it in a little bit, maybe sheathes that sword occasionally, uses the shield, they could have a little more success. But that's the mid lane matchup. I also wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the bot side, because I think that this is also very impactful when we look at this series. Saskio has been having some insane performances on the Jinx. She's been popping off on this champion. Got 2 Baron steals over the past 2 days with Jinx rockets. And Cody's son, he's a player with a big name, big reputation, a lot of hype behind him. He's played in LCS. He's been to Worlds. And I don't know if this is that one side of a matchup. Like, you'd expect that a player like Cody's son would be heavily favored over Saskia, but what are our thoughts there? Alkbatter, I'll let you go first with this one. Do you think that this is favored in either way, or what's this lane matchup looking like?
Well, Cody's son has at least shown that he's willing to play a lot more champions other than just Jinx. There's been a massive priority, and we're seeing it start to kind of spread to other teams. Cody's son even was like, hey, maybe I'll pick up Jinx myself. She has been receiving a little bit of love. We'll just see just across the board, Cody's son's stats are by far and away a lot better than Saskio's. I will say that obviously this comes with that, and I want to also just give a lot of credit over to the supports for this matchup, because both Fizzy and Sir Kenji are massive kind of pieces in the chess game of how they want to play, and both of these guys, I think, kind of offer different things to each of their teams, are different kind of expectations. And for the side of TSM Academy, if you look at their bot lane, they're playing for Cody's son. Fizzy is not one to really roam out of lane all that much so far in UGP, and they've been sticking on things like Braum. They've been trying to protect him, and I'm looking forward to what the bot lane evolution comes out to be. Are we going to continue to Jinx? Does Thresh start to receive bans? We saw it last series that they were getting rid of it very, very early, and that just means that we kind of got to start going down. Where does Rakan fit in? Like, what exactly we're going to see from these two?
Yeah.
Anything to add to that discussion, Tim? Yeah.
For me, like, the big thing with Cody's son has been that he has been, I'd say, kind of the only person on TSM who has showed that restraint, that ability to lay back and say, no, our win condition in this game is we have zone control. We want them to come into us. We want to set up an objective. We don't need to go out and, pull the trigger on a bunch of plays and force fights. And he's been the one who's actually been showing that restraint and that reserve. And it's really showed up when he does carry some late game team fights. You saw he had huge damage output. He's willing to play, a variety of different champions, which you definitely expect from him with so much experience that he has. He should have a larger champion pool, and he does. And flexing that a little bit, I think, is really helpful for TSM. So I think, what I need to see more from TSM is not a bigger performance from Cody's son, but rather the team around him creating ideal team fights for him to carry through. Because at the peak of Cody's son's career, that's what he has been the best at. I think is like following up engages, cleaning up team fights, and I think he is continuing to do that. But his playmakers around him need to clean up the setups a little more.
But does that go into TSM Academy's win condition for this match in particular? Because when we look across the board, that top side, Hanser versus Hybrid, that's a big experience disparity there as well. So where does TSM Academy want to put their resources? Do they want to play around their AD carry, play a little more reserved, let Cody Sun scale for those late game fights? Or should they play around Hanser instead and look to get aggressive through that lane?
Yeah, I think you can honestly go either way with it, and what you want to do with your jungle pressure in the early game and so on. I think Cody's son has shown he's very capable and comfortable with kind of letting his support go somewhere else if they wanted to do that, which they haven't been doing a lot of, but he can kind of weak side his lane. Hauntzer is dominating a lot of lane matchups, and so you can either double down on that and look for tower dives, look for turret pressure, and covering his wave crashes, things like that, or you can say, hey, Hauntzer's going to win his lane matchup no matter what. We'll just generate enough cross-map pressure that if they do try to punish him and pick him off, which can happen, that we're going to punish on the other side of the map and take the bot tower, take dragons, and so on. I think TSM have the flexibility to do either approach. I'm not sure which one they're going to take, but I think either can be successful for them.
And then if we're looking at the counterpunch, Alec, what's the answer from Winthrop there? If there's multiple options for TSM Academy, what should be their strategy going into this game?
Okay, I know us on the desk at least have been kind of harsh on Frost Forest the past couple days. We'll apologize, but
a little bit.
Frost Forest and the team, and for this entire Winthrop, punish these mistakes. These guys are I think TSM Academy are looking a little bit trigger happy. They want to look for these fights like Tim was saying, and if there's ever a time to try and just pounce on these mistakes, pounce on some mispositions, or just going really deep, especially for someone like Haunzer, this is basically the time where Winthrop can start to thrive, get hybrid some kills when Haunzer gets a little bit too greedy with some of those recalls or where he's putting in the wave. I'm looking at Winthrop. This is the time to be aggressive. We've been telling you to rein it in a little bit. I think this might be the time where Frost Forest gets that amazing engage, goes a little bit too far, and finds a couple kills.
Wow, that's not what I expected. I thought you were going to say hybrids play weak side top lane, just pick the Ord, just don't
He's
die
always
to
weak side top
Haunzer.
lane at this point. Both of these guys are trying to play weak side top lane.
Okay, well, when we look at the top lane matchup, especially in this meta, a lot of it still comes down to the jungle. So, but we only have a quick little bit before we have to get into our predictions, but we haven't touched on the junglers yet. Tim, if you have to give a quick, 20 to 30 second highlight of these junglers, Frost Forest versus Babip, what does this look like for you before we hop into predictions?
I think, given the criticism that has gone against Frost Forest, I think and the experience Babip has, you'd lean towards saying, hey, Babip should be able to run over this matchup, but that hasn't been the case. I think Babip has struggled a little bit. It's a little unclear why he has looked kind of iffy at times. I think he needs to prove that his experience advantage, having gone to Worlds, can give him a big advantage and give his team an advantage, because he hasn't shown what was expected from him before he came to North America. So I'm looking forward to see if he can make a positive impression today.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype around Babip when he was coming here. I remember getting excited myself, but now TSM Academy find themselves in one of the Tier 1 tournaments in the losers bracket. The winner here guarantees their spot in the Proving Ground circuit, but the loser will have to go to the next Tier 1 tournaments and try and get through to Proving Grounds through that way. So that's what it comes down to right now, guys. We got to give our predictions of who we think is actually going to win this match and lock in that spot in the Proving Grounds circuit. This match... I don't know. Based on how things went last time, I'll hold my prediction for right now. Alec, I'm going to give it to you first. What are your thoughts here?
I really want the Winthrop boys to be able to pull it out, but I have to give this to TSM Academy. I think that with some of the things that they were able to learn from Sola Fide, I'm hoping that they were able to kind of get down on those fundamentals, make sure that they've tightened up the gameplay, because I think for both of the Academy teams that we have here in UGP, a big thing has been having a little bit of a mixed identity of what they want to do, and hopefully with more games under their belt that they've gotten here, that TSM can kind of pull out on a really great win and show some consistency and kind of prove why they deserve to be in Proving Grounds.
Okay, so taking the safe bet. I think that's the way to frame that.
My prediction back at the beginning of the tournament was really bad, so at this point I have to hedge bets.
You just got to go for the consistent. Tim, is there any chance for Winthrop, or are you agreed? What's the match record looking like here?
I think we're going to see TSM give Haunzer no more Scion. They're going to give him a little bit of an opportunity to snowball his lane with or without jungle pressure. I think they should and they will give Fizzy some engaged champions, no more Braum and defensive picks, because that's what he's good at. And I think with those adjustments, their coaching staff knows what's up. They know what's been going well, what hasn't been going well. They know that they're in the losers bracket, and you can't afford to try to play something different or try to style on your opponent. I think they're going to win 2-0. I think they're going to make the right adjustments.
2-0, okay, wow. Confidence coming in from Tim there for the TSM Academy team. I mean, you got to rep the Academy teams, right? I mean, that's your content. That's your brand right now. Yeah.
That's true. He does it.
What was that latest episode he just came out with? It's good for amateur teams to beat the Academy teams? Yeah.
So there you go. He wants the Winthrop win. That's why.
I was hoping for some more of that. I'm also on the same board. I will say TSM Academy 2-0 as well. I just think that there's a pretty big disparity here. But that is it from us here on the desk. We are ready to hop in to game number 1, or at least send it over to the casters to introduce themselves. Take it away.
Angus, hello and welcome to the casting desk. My name is Eric Deserex Beltran, and joining me, of course, is Joshua Joshi Howard. Now, Josh, we started our first cast with Winthrop. You know, we followed up with another Winthrop one. We're just going to continue casting Winthrop as we have a matchup of Winthrop University versus TSM Academy.
And you know what, Eric? We haven't cast a single Winthrop defeat yet, so we'll have to see if we can continue that streak coming through. But as we already talked about as a desk, we spent a lot of time talking about, this is going to be a tough road for them coming up against TSM Academy. And even though their last time that they faced each other relatively recently was a bit closer than we expected, it ended up being a pretty dominant victory for TSM Academy in the end. And of course, this is the last chance. If either of these teams are able to pick up this series, they're going to be moving on to Proving Grounds, and they're going to be able to take a break for a couple of weeks while they look for an opportunity to scout out the rest of the teams in the actual final part of Proving Grounds.
Yeah, the top 4 teams make it to Proving Ground. So a win here for either side of the bracket for the match later going on today, that also will qualify you for Proving Ground. So 2 more teams just waiting to qualify through. This is going to be the deciders right here. And there's a lot on the line for both of these teams. There's a lot at stake for both of these teams, not just with the Proving Ground stuff, but what's been going on as a whole. I mean, Winthrop has been one of the best underdog stories to be watching. They did have the loss against TSMA that was talked about earlier, but they've just been showing up to a lot of these fights and fighting tooth and nail. I mean, the TSMA one was 2-1, and one of those was they had a comeback win from. So it's definitely some very exciting gameplay that we've seen out of Winthrop University.
Yeah, I see Caesar coming through behind you, so you know it has to be a good omen for someone coming out today. So I'm excited to see how these guys are going to be stacking up, as we are going to be jumping into draft fairly soon. But the biggest thing I think that was a takeaway from watching the last time these teams played against each other was we've kind of looked at hybrids as one of the gatekeepers up in the top lane. Like, you must be at least this tall to enter this lane in general. And so far, Hunter's kind of been looking like a giant. Just like watching them play last time. Hybrids going on the Shen. I mean, your main goal in Shen versus Renekton is to not lose too hard, and wasn't able to quite do that. You ended up falling significantly far behind, and the rest of the map was not able to compete in the arms race. They weren't able to get enough gold onto players like Doxa and Saskio to justify the fact that this Shen ends up falling too far behind. So I'm excited to see how they're going to adapt to that this time, because Hybrids, if he's got a good matchup, can actually take it to Hanser if he actually has the confidence to do so.
And then another lane to look at is Babip. A very interesting lane to look at, to say the least. Lack of a lane, it is the jungle after all. Because Babip can do very, very great things when it comes to the early game. TSM have been absolutely phenomenal when it comes to taking early game towers. They are 100% when it comes to taking the first 3 towers of the game. So they do have that early control. Babip loves to draft for early game control, such as the Nidalee. But then we have moments like the Smite, Joshi.
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times so far, and it's not just in their Winthrop games. It has been a thorn in their side. They haven't been able to, they haven't been able to control a lot of these objectives, but we can't fault that entirely to Babip, right? That is something that the entire team has to be coordinating around when there are opportunities for these long-range steals, for things with Unsealed Spellbook to come in and smite away the Baron. The whole team needs to be playing around that. It's not just the jungler's job to land the button. It's the rest of the team's job to make sure that the opponent never has an opportunity to try and steal. And we'll see if they can coordinate that a little bit better today. The one other thing that we've already talked about, and the analyst desk was a little bit nicer than I'm going to be, is that players like Sword and Hanser have a lot of confidence, and sometimes it borders on arrogance. And I'm very excited to see how they're actually going to be able to play that today, because they go for a lot of plays. They go for a lot of these things that they feel like they need to in order to prop up the rest of the team. Sometimes they look really, really good. Sometimes they look like geniuses, and other times leaves a little bit left to be desired. So I think if we get to see the positive side of those two players coming out today, it's going to be a rather quick series.
I mean, you're talking about an ego. Let's talk about the mental game. You were telling me this earlier that Haunter will BM his opponent more so than any other player in this tournament. He will spam those emotes, he will dance, he will play the mental game and try and tilt you. That being said, though, he's a little bit susceptible to tilting himself. However, though, throwing it to another lane, taking a look at the mid lane, I mean, this is one of the things that we're most excited about as we do head into draft. We're already halfway through there. Is that mid lane matchup? The analysts were talking about it, and we're already going for the mid lane picks as well. The hovers coming in. Let's actually take a look at how this draft is going overall. Kaisa, Hecarim, as well as Camille picked in the Phase 1 for Winthrop, Xayah, Gnar, and Lilia for TSM Academy in Phase 1.
Yeah, pretty interesting to see this coming through. Obviously, the Lilia Hecarim has been something we've been seeing quite a bit, and the early Gnar pick coming out for Haunter is pretty bold, right? We've been talking about the fact that hybrids, if he has a good counter matchup, can actually win these lanes sometimes, and Hecarim, Camille are fantastic divers of Gnar later on. I believe we saw that yesterday in the series that they played then, where just being able to punish the fact that Cloud9 Amateur's top lane Speedo wasn't taking didn't have an opportunity to get away from the Camille, just let hybrids take the ignite instead of having a flash. And by the end of the game, Speedo was 0-9 because of how much attention hybrids and Frost Forest were paying to this lane. So if we see something similar today, that's definitely a new avenue for Winthrop to try and find victories. And of course, on the opposite side, very thankful that Kenji is continuing to play these engaged supports. And so it's going to be a very bloody game one way or the other, as both these teams really drafting to fight.
And the drafts are really standard for both of these squads as well. TSM always tend to pick their top lane very, very early and forsake the counter pick. They don't care about it. They believe Haunter will style on hybrids once again. Another thing that Winthrop like to do is they like to save their support towards the end, towards Phase 2, because Kenji has been such an enabler when it comes to team fights. So draft going pretty standard and pretty much the way we expected it to go in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, a couple of other points of note. One, Saskio has been playing an absolute massive amount of Jinx throughout this entire tournament. The Unified Grand Prix, we saw him play every single game that it wasn't banned, I'm pretty sure. But prior to that, this was his most played champion throughout all the Tier 2 tournaments. And so we kind of get to see him back onto his second side of the coin, right? The other ADC that he really likes to play. And I think this is going to be really good because both Saskio and Cody Sun are playing these very self-sufficient AD carries that will be able to play for themselves. And as you see the entire rosters coming up on your screen, it's not common that I feel like we have both team compositions coming out with very solid drafts that have a lot of opportunities in the way that they like to play. So I'm very impressed that both TSM and Winthrop really coming in with their best foot forward. And I don't think either team has a clear advantage for potentially the first time in the entire UGP.
But you did harp on Sasuke a little bit and the Kaisa stuff. Can we talk about Sword as well? And the Azir spam that he's been doing. He's finally been forced off of it because of that ban in the second phase. But Sword is someone who just loves to play that Azir almost exclusively when it comes to draft.
Yeah, it's been, having a lot of mixed results. And as Tim already said, there is a reason teams were letting him play. Is because he is very feast or famine. He goes for these big plays, and sometimes they look great, other times they don't. And so now putting him back on the Syndra, a little bit more consistent of a performing champion, and we'll kind of get to see. I talk about this quite a bit, right, Eric? The team that gets to objectives first is generally going to have an advantage, and that's going to continue being true this time. It is very scary to face check something like a Syndra, but Syndra also can't face check on her own. She needs these tanks to walk in front of her, and so that means Haunter and Fizzy has to be moving with the rest of the team and to actually have an opportunity to go to some of these dragons if they don't get to it, the 30 seconds before it is actually on the rift.
And continuing with that early game stuff, one of the things that really stands out to me about Winthrop is just how much vision control they really try and establish on this game. Statistic-wise, they do clear the most wards out of this entire tournament so far, and they're second place for wards placed. So they value that vision, and it really shows because even when Winthrop fall behind in kills, they're always able to keep somewhat even when it comes to the gold lead, and then they use that to play the map and to play the skirmish game, and that's when we start to see Doxa pop off. Second highest KDA in this tournament. He can be an absolute menace, an absolute beast.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see how these two teams are going to stack up. I'm a little bit curious to see right? I know yesterday, one of our other analysts, Max, was really talking about the fact that if Kenji can get into the mid lane, if he can interfere with the matchup between Doxa and Sword, it can sometimes be enough to actually just end the game on its own. If you get Doxa a lead, he's going to be able to carry it through. And we all know the difference between a Syndra that is ahead and a Syndra that is behind. While it is fairly consistent, it does similar things, you know, in terms of team fighting. You get these big stuns, you get some good damage done onto squishy members. If you can also threaten some of the tankier members like the Hecarim, like the Nautilus, then it's going to be so much more effective. You're able to move around the map, move around the fights in ways that you don't have to feel as afraid of a lot of these characters. So we get to see Kenji on this engaged support, see him try and move around, see him try and go into the mid lane, and I'm excited to see that because this is a pretty standard matchup, right? Syndra versus Orianna, slightly Syndra favored early on, but it doesn't necessarily stay that way throughout the entire game as we do finally load onto the Rift.
Onto the Rift we go. TSM Academy, Winthrop University. Winner heads towards losers finals, as well as qualifying, being the third team to qualify for the Proving Ground Spring. A lot on the line as the battle lines are drawn, and definitely a very hype matchup here today for the UGP.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that Highbridge is once again opting into the Ignite as well as the Omni Stone, right? This is the kind of confidence he brought up against Speedo yesterday, and they were heavily rewarded for that. So I'm expecting to see a lot of 2v2s going on up in the top lane. Hybrids and Frost Forest versus Haunter and Babib. Right now, both teams kind of moving into the enemy jungle. Nobody getting a whole lot of offensive vision, but we do see Haunter throwing down the ward on the top side red buff, so he will have a good idea when Frost Forest is around, and they should be able to react to that properly. Look for the 2v2s if they want it, or allow Babib to move to the other side of the map and potentially interfere with the fact that Frost Forest isn't going to be around, and Sasuke and Sir Kenji going to have to deal with any aggression from the jungler on their own.
Even knowing that it is Flash Ignite, you do have an idea that Frost Force is going to focus there. We're talking about that quite a bit, but one of the things about Frost Force is he tends to be quite sneaky with some of his pathing. We saw it in the previous series where we did have the hybrids going on to Camille, just a little bit of trading going on. Hybrids going on to Camille without that smite, but right away, Frost Forest just knew, I'm going to forsake my blue, I'm going to do just a very partial clear and instantly gank the top lane and try and get hybrids well ahead of his lane opponent. If we could see the same thing here, honestly, I could see that being the beginning of the end for TSM Academy in this game, because Haunter is just such a fierce competitor for TSM Academy. As more damage goes out, a lot of bullying going on in the bot lane all meanwhile.
Yeah, Babib opting to go directly from his bottom side of the map to the top side, so he will steal away the Raptors from Frost Forest. The ward gets cleared out, and this is going to have a very interesting effect on how these early pathings go. Obviously, Frost Forest doesn't have as many camps to clear. He's going to be forced to try and do something else, but the question is going to be, is he going to be able to move and try and contest some of these scuttles with the fact that he doesn't have any priority in his mid or top lane, or is he going to try and go for a gank? Haunter is mini Gnar now, he's tired, so he's not going to be able to stack up a rage bar for a while, and he should also know that Frost Forest can be here. So look at this, 2v2 already materializing in the top side.
Yeah, but Bip going to be the wiser to it, takes the same path that Frost took, and will be able to cut it off. So that early game plan that we were looking to see out of Frost Forest, it was already completely scouted by Babip.
Oh, look at this. Babip walking away. Haunter does need to be a little bit more careful, but the fact that Doxa and Hybrids are both pushing means Haunter's the play.
He's still going for it. The autos come in. Here comes the hookshot. Teleport going to go through. The flash away to get away from the hookshot, but double teleports. It's going to be a 3-on-3. First blood will go to Sort. He's able to get there first.
He gets it.
It's a 1-for-1 trade, though, as Haunter will fall. Both top laners down. Frost Force in a very tough spot. Dox is trying to do something to get his pony out of dodge, but it's not going to be able to find it. Getting euthanized
Teleports.
is
double teleports.
Another teleport comes in. Hybrid's going to join the fray. Just all the teleports being burnt in the top side. Haunter, Hybrids, they rejoin this fight, and now Dox is going to go down at the hands of Haunter. Hybrids is going to try and find Haunter on the revenge kill, but he can't seem to get it. We'll take the consolation prize instead. But ultimately, the double kill goes over to Haunter, and a net win for TSM Academy, almost turning into dead. Even the tower almost takes down Sasuke all meanwhile. And what a chaotic start to this fight.
I love the confidence that Winthrop is currently showing, but they are not getting rewarded for it. The fact that Hanser is still alive at the end of that, the fact that he's coming back to lane with double Dorans and boots at this point is going to be really big. You see, he's already got the shutdown potential onto him. So we saw that extended 2v2, right? It was a very readable play, and TSM reacted fantastically to it. But the question is, are they going to be able to continue playing with this small advantage? Because with no flash, the Ignite's going to be up way sooner for hybrids, and that just means that it's going to be a big invitation for Frost Force to come back up to the top side and try and punish the fact that Gnar is not going to have any escapes.
And this time you don't have to deal with the 10,000 teleports, so it might be a little bit cleaner if Frost Force does head back towards that top side, if Hanser does get the overextension. But now, taking a look at Kenji, this is the very, very standard thing we see coming out of Kenji, going for those roams, getting out that vision very, very early, and almost looking to try and find something in the mid lane, but doesn't look like he's going to get too much. We do have a replay ready from that last skirmish.
Yeah, and this really all comes down to the fact that BABIP took away those Raptors originally, right? We said Frost Force needed to try and find something on the map. He needed to either try and counter jungle himself or go for one of these plays top lane. And Frost Force opting into the top side without priority means that Sword is able to come here first. He's able to use the teleport in. While we see that Winthrop play it about as well as they could have in order to trade a bunch of these kills back, the fact that they are still falling behind, the fact that they were perfectly read by TSM just means that they're going to fall slightly behind when all is said and done.
And the chaos is here. Both of these teams, very high energy when it comes to taking the map, and they're showing it. We talked about the early games of both of these squads, and they're fighting around these early games. We also talked about how Winthrop have a win condition they usually go for. Well, this time TSM are well aware of it and already trying to respond to it. So competitive matchup thus far, TSM able to get that nice early lead going for them, as we do take a look at what happened in the bot side after that skirmish went on.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting to see, right? Because it is just these two bottom lanes 2v2ing, and Sir Kenji, despite being fairly low, Fizzy goes in, and Cody's son didn't look like he was ready for this, and they're just able to turn it around pretty quickly. Fizzy, trying to save the rest of his team, trying to allow Cody's son to back, just ends up getting punished for it, and with everybody knowing that the entire 3v3 is happening topside, no real opportunity for anybody to try and interfere with this, and that's what we kind of see. Sir Kenji very, very willing to go for some of these plays, and eventually they find their reward of getting this Cloud Dragon. But the top side of the map, I mean, Frost Forest needs to kind of come up here soon in order to bail Hybrids out. He's down 25 CS at only 7.5 minutes because he ends up dying twice during that top lane fight.
Yeah, and with that bot lane fight, that was interesting the way that entire thing played out. I mean, you were saying it, like, he looked completely unprepared, he being Cody's son, to respond to that. And that's the type of thing that you expect to be well coordinated already when you are an academy team. So yeah, TSM right now, they're not living up to the expectation they need to, but, you know, they still got the gold lead, and they still got the ability to try and take this back into their favor.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to one of the things that Tim was saying, right? Like, you're looking at Cody's son as this very stable bot laner, as having the ability to just play these team fights incredibly well if the rest of his team is doing his job. But he needs to be on the same page as everyone, because we always talk about this. If 4 players are doing the right play and one person's doing something else, it's not going to be as effective as if everybody is doing, you know, the wrong play. That just happens to be the one that everybody agrees upon. So now I really like this adaptation coming out from Winthrop. They already picked up the objective on the bottom side of the map, so they're going to rotate their 2v2, which is slightly ahead in terms of itemization, up to the top side, where Frost Force can help them contest for this Rift Herald. But the big thing that's going to depend on is whether or not Doxa can find an opportunity to build a priority and participate in this. Otherwise, this can be a 4v3 that favors TSM.
See Frost headed over towards this top side. Potentially Winthrop looking to get priority over here, but TSM are going to feed over that blue towards Sword. Actually, looks like a fight starting to break out. Frost Force is just going to come over here to try and grab the steal. Instead, he's going to go right after Sword. Sword falls critically low. One more auto will do it, and Sword will be the victim of Frost Forest. Able to grab that kill and get on out of there. He won't grab the blue buff, but the priority was enough to set up the Rift Herald.
that was cool coming out from Frost Forest. Like, that's not the play I expect people to see. You normally expect when the jungler comes in, they're just going to try and smite away the blue buff, but Frost Forest is like, nah, my actual goal here is to pick up sword. They find the kill, they get the Rift Herald for themselves, and that's the kind of play, the heads-up play that we have not been expecting for this guy, but another fight breaking out.
Yeah, here comes a fight going straight after Cody-san. It's going to be Frost Forest, but there's 3 dudes just waiting to bully him right off. Frost Forest will go for the retreat, and no fight going to come out. Instead, Doxa forced to cancel his recall because Babip was getting a little bit too close there. But yeah, so far, a good matchup as we take a look at replay of that last fight.
Yeah, again, I just want to point out the fact that this is the play that you don't normally expect, and I find it hard to fault Sword for this, because this isn't the kind of thing where, while we obviously see that it's possible, it's not what they were expecting. And you know, even with the stun coming through, Sword prevented the shockwave from coming out from Doxa. It's still enough, right? Doxa just gives them a little bit of extra movement speed, and they're able to fight it. But Hybrid's getting caught out, probably dead here. Oh, just kidding. He already used the ultimate.
Simple hook shot, but look behind the tower. They're looking to try and set up a dive on the Hybrids. Unleash Power goes out. He uses the stopwatch. Able to stay alive. Hybrids gets out of a pretty tough spot.
Kenji's
That's
only
the flash
5.
burn and ultimate burnt by Sword Art. So he's not going to have any more tools to really go for this. Ultimately, the disengage comes through from TSM Academy.
Yeah. All right. So, you know, it's pretty interesting to watch this game because of how scrappy it is. This is something we have kind of expected from TSM when they're playing towards the top side. You notice that all 4 of their kills are held by Hanser and Babbitt, but seeing how rotational this game has really been is kind of surprising. It's not something we've necessarily been seeing coming out of Winthrop, and once again, doing the do-si-do. You go top lane, you put 1 foot up from the top side as the hokey pokey, then you say like, all right, well, we got what we came for. Time to take that foot out, put it back bot lane, where we're going to be contesting for the next dragon. And so we talk about TSM, we praise them for picking up the first ring of outer towers in every single game that they played. Winthrop currently getting 2 for 2 in neutral objectives and are looking to be at the next dragon first, and we've already touched on how important that's going to be for this team.
Yeah, you can see all that vision established, as well as Frost Force headed towards that side of the jungle. And yeah, even Dox is getting freed up. They're all going to start rotating in that direction. We still have 15 seconds until this dragon does spawn. It will be an Infernal Drake. It'll be the second Drake for Winthrop to pick up, and we've seen it. Winthrop do like to play around Drakes quite a bit. They highly value grabbing those Drakes and getting that soul point and being able to pressure through that.
Yeah, Babip spotted top lane too, so they know this is a free dragon, but Hybrids knows he's the play. He knows he can't really contest this turret, and it might be enough to get several plates and potentially even further, but Babip just choosing to opt for the gold play instead of the objective play. And so that will allow them to get a little bit of compensation for the fact that they are giving the dragon. Nobody is requiring you to watch the other team kill the dragon. You do, in fact, have this global audio noise to know when it's taken. You don't need to go in and get the timer like you used to do back in Season 3.
And all this attention towards the top side is really putting Hybrids behind. He wasn't able to get that early advantage from the ganks that we saw happen earlier. And now just look at the CS. It's enormous. We got 60 separating these top laners. So Hybrids is having a rough lane. He's staying alive after those last bit of skirmishes, but it's not going to be enough to really get Camille offline. And if something's not done quickly, Hybrids can just fall into that dead lane that we saw in TSMA versus Winthrop game Series 1.
Yeah, and unlike Shen, who has a really good defensive capability, Hybrids really only has offensive tools. He can only try and jump on the enemy team, and as you saw all the gold totals come through in the graphic on the left side of the screen, you're seeing that all of these members of TSM Academy are currently leading in gold against their lane opponents, and that is absolutely huge. They're going to be able to really start contesting Dragons 3 and 4, which are going to be spawning in about 3.5 minutes. And it means that while Winthrop have done a fantastic job at controlling these early objectives, they might not be able to continue pushing for the soul because of how far behind in gold they are. They're not going to have the item completions. They're not going to have the experience to try and go for these. In Hanser, you see that Babip's coming up. This might be a dive.
Oh, so much pressure onto Hybrids. Babip, instead, not looking to go for the dive. They just want to wail away at this tower, and looks like Hybrids might be content giving it up. I'm not sure if he's going to recall back. I'm not even sure if that would be the right play, considering how close Dragon is to spawn. I mean, we got 3 minutes, but it's still a long timer for teleport to be back.
True. be something you would have to do a little bit earlier, but I like this positioning from Kenji, right? Winthrop and TSM both doing a fantastic job at looking for cross-map plays. They get spotted out, so it's going to be more difficult for them to try and do anything, but they are creating space for Saskia, who is looking all right so far. He's down a little bit in CS, but they are able to pick up, you know, a kill for themselves. They are able to be relevant in this game, and so as we jump into this mid game, the big thing that we got to pay attention to is the fact that Sword going directly for a major item, whereas Doxa stopping off to pick up the Verdant Barrier gives him a lot of AP and magic resistance, so he's harder to burst out by Sword. As okay, that was interesting. I thought Frost Forest was just like chilling in the Krug Pit on purpose, but he's coming right around. They end up picking another turret up for themselves, so the gold lead is not as large as it could be, but it's larger than it perhaps should be.
Yeah, so brick for brick, top for bot. You can see that gold lead growing over time, getting more and more in favor of TSMA. But we have seen TSMA falter, even with the strong gold lead. We saw that in Solifide game number 2. We'll see if they can continue this momentum, because for TSM, it always feels like once they have a strong early game, they can run that through to be able to take over the entire map. But if they don't get that, there are times where they can have those hiccups, where one team fight can change it, just like it did with the Solifida game. And Doxa is on a champion that enables that sort of play.
Yeah, we'll see. This might be the first neutral objective getting picked up for TSM. They have all of their members here first, and again, we see that Hybrids currently has the Trinity Force in his pocket, so he doesn't look as poor as he is, but he is definitely pretty far behind the curve, and you're seeing Winthrop wisely at this time. They're going for the gold play. They're making sure that they can farm things out, making sure that they can get a little bit of compensation, because they don't need to watch the other team actually just hitting this objective. They give it over, and we'll see what the TSM is able to do with that, because we have a fight coming up. The team fight counter on the top left of the screen. Yeah, it's the dragon counter. I hear you say it in Twitch chat, but generally this is when teams look to go for things, and because the game has calmed down so much since some of that early skirmishing, it's not obvious that our teams recognize how big of a gold difference there actually is. If you're on Winthrop, you probably don't think you're 3,000 gold behind.
No, it doesn't feel like it whatsoever until you start looking at those CS scores and realize that a good chunk of that gold went over to Hanser. But that being said, Dox is starting to match it. He does have a CS lead somewhat going on in the bot side, but here comes Frost as he goes straight after Sword, forcing the flash, but that is going to be ult for ult right there, and ult for ult, Summoner Spell for Summoner Spell. Dragon's coming up quite soon. Still tools that would be very nice to have if that fight does break through, but instead, TSMA, they have their eyes set on the mid lane as Shelly hits the Rift.
The idea was good. I like the idea that they're trying to find a pick before the dragon actually spawns, but unfortunately, trading the Hecarim ultimate for Syndra ult is not an even trade whatsoever. They have to try and find some kind of play a little bit earlier, try and pick off the strong members, right? Like maybe you go kill a Haunter 40 seconds before the dragon actually spawns so you can come down. But unfortunately, at this point, I think Winthrop are going to have to give up this dragon. So they are going to be stopped at 2, only halfway to Dragon Soul. TSM Academy, with all of their members online at this point, 2 mythics in their inventories, are going to be able to pick that up and continue looking for ways to bully this game through.
Yeah, I appreciate the attempt onto Sword. It was definitely not a bad play to make. At the end of the day, it was just the smarter move to surrender that dragon since that play didn't work out. So it's a good move from Winthrop, but it's a smart move from TSMA as well to recognize what tools Winthrop have, and when they're down, what they can get from it.
Yeah. So now we're seeing lane assignments starting to shift once again, right? These turrets, as we've noted before, all 3 outer turrets going down for TSM before Winthrop are able to find the second turret. Right, this is continuing with a lot of their early game dominance. They are currently up almost 4,000 gold. Most of their members have their first items completed, and I think Winthrop are, you know, starting to get a good idea that, hey, maybe we aren't as even in this game as we were initially expecting. They are starting to lose a lot of these positions, and the gold from those alone is starting to stack up pretty consistently. But the question is, when are they going to start looking for fights? Are they going to try and fall back and let Hybrids just scale up later on to the game? Because eventually he does win this side lane. Eventually he just has so much damage that it doesn't matter what items Hanser has. He's just going to be losing the 1v1, or they're just going to try and use him as like a Pokeball, right? Like Hybrids, I choose you. Go lock down Cody-san. And then you just blow him up with all the extra things on top of him, right? You can just use him as a tool to throw at the enemy team, but you can eventually do that. So they have a lot of options still available to them.
I mean, you're saying that when Gnar is the champion that looks the most like a Pokemon. So,
he's even got an evolution.
That's true. That's true. The Mega Gnar form. Mega Evolution on top of that.
Oh,
really,
true.
really
There we
serious.
go. We'll see.
Now
Frost
posture
Forest
up,
does need to
wait.
be careful.
Yeah, looking for Frost here. Fizzy can not get close enough, and Kenji always happy to throw out that hook, even if it's going to land. You know, even if it's not going to land, maybe you're just hoping they walk into it. It doesn't matter. You miss the shots you don't take. Made that joke before, but towards this mid lane, still back to almost a North American A-round. Cody-san just clearing out, looking for the engage.
Oh,
Gonna
they
find
slept him.
Asleep. On to Kenji. Kenji taking a lot of damage, a lot of pain. Unleashed power is not enough to drop him. He will survive, but just barely, Josh.
Yeah, that's a lot of resources committed, but ultimately it's going to be difficult for Winthrop to really punish it, right? There's no objectives that are easy for them to take, that they can threaten and force the members of TSM Academy to respond to them, and of course, they're behind, and, you know, if they realize it, they're going to realize that it's going to be very difficult to do anything. But I like this adaptation that's coming through. This is very much in the wheelhouse of TSM Academy. They're opting to give Hanser the red buff rather than Cody-san, because they know if they give him tools to continue bullying hybrids, this CS lead, which is currently close to 80 at 20 minutes in the game, is only likely to grow.
Now, setting up towards his top side is going to be Doxa. He does have some backup in the form of Frost Force, and they might be potentially able to set up a play here. It does look like Sword is a little bit the wiser to it. The wave is getting cleared away, so Frost not going to commit to it just yet. Instead, just going to take the recall. Nope, he's stopping it. But now is a bad time to commit for it. You do have both Bobip and Fizzy showing up, so not willing to go for the play just yet.
Yeah, I'm actually very impressed. Like, something we haven't touched on significantly at this point is the fact that almost all the times we see Frost Forest or Kenji like moving into a part of the map where they are looking for a play, you're seeing Babip and Fizzy almost always just chilling in Fog of War right behind the members that are potentially looking to get jumped on. And when you don't have that kind of vision necessary from Winthrop, you notice that a lot of their vision is in their side of the map. If you don't know where all the TSM members are, it is so difficult to go for these kind of plays. But hey, 50 seconds left until the 4th dragon of the game actually spawns. Winthrop really want it, and they might be feeling a lot more comfortable now that most of their members are sitting on an item and a half.
They're bringing more and more members towards this bottom side for this Drake. TSMA are going to posture up for it as well. Over the wall, we already have Bobip. So all members are ready to fight on both ends. And the question is, what is going to be the big impactful moment? I am always looking at Doxa because Shockwave is huge in these neutral fights. But you got to look at the raw damage coming out of TSMA at this point. Hanser's so far ahead. He has now become a tanky boy. Sword is very, very strong. And all you need to do is outscale people by pressing R. There's a lot of challenges in the way of Winthrop University. And thought Hybrids was going to throw caution to the wind and kind of be a free money bag right there. But the fight is going to break out. Here comes Knockup. Doxa over the wall, able to get the Shockwave onto 2. Onto the backline as Hybrid jumps in. He's going to go after Sword. Sword will fall. Sasuke able to get the damage in onto the backline and is completely untouched, and so is Doxa. It's a 1-for-2 exchange. The carries are alive, but TSMA are the ones who are able to get the most out of this, and they're going to start setting up for this Drake. Kenji, Sasuke, Doxa, they have a lot they have to get through if they want to stop this Drake call, and they're looking like they want to contest it. Kenji still posturing up. 4k health remains on the Drake. 2k health now. There is no smite available. There is no way to grab this. Doxa will throw out the command dissonance one more time, but you can't outsmite a smite. It will not be found. TSMA, they grab Drake number 2.
Yeah, that fight actually looked pretty decent for Winthrop the entire time. So the end result remains TSM Academy picking up the next Drake for themselves, continuing to increase this gold lead. They're now up 5,000 gold, and it's going to be very important how much of a lead they can pick up now, because if you look at the members of Winthrop, they will continue to scale. But as we get the replay coming in on the screen, notice how far away Doxa is in this fight. Notice the fact that he's not able to participate as effectively as he wants. He's only able to get one rotation rotation. And because the members of TSM are better grouped, they're able to create better battle lines. They're able to protect more of their members. And as you see the damage on the fight, it's actually kind of surprising from Doxa. He actually had a lot of impact just being in the second half of that. But imagine the kind of impact he would have had if he was there the entire time. 2v4.
This is a bad spot to be. If you are Winthrop,
let's go.
Kenji's going to go down, but they're looking to turn it around. Finding Sword once again. Haunter will teleport in. Hybrids, there's nowhere for him to really go, but you do have backup over towards this top side, so maybe there's a chance for Hybrids, but nope. Walks into the wandering arms of Cody's son. That will be a kill going over to Haunter.
You saw the moment of indecision there coming out from Winthrop. Do they want to continue the fight? They have members coming over. Do they want to back away? And it ends up leaving Hybrids just there to die on his own. But Doxa now getting caught.
Almost got out. Just having Frost in the wings, in case he does. Now, Frost does have Flash, but he has Ghost. Not Flash, excuse me, Smite, but he has also Ghost, which means he can't flash over the wall. He does not have his ultimate, so he can't get over the wall any other creative way. But here comes the engage. Into the wall goes Doxa, down to the grave. He falls. Frost Forest will follow him, and that is beautiful from TSMA. They knew to peel off as a unit, and they executed it beautifully.
Nice. That was so good coming out from TSM. This is what you always want to see from coordinated teams. You don't hit the Baron just because. You always have a point to it. You're either trying to kill the Baron, you're either trying to burn it down and pick up the buff, or you're using it as bait so you can turn on the enemy team. And this time, TSM Academy hitting the Baron to turn. They look to kill multiple members. They look to kill Frost Force because he doesn't have Flash, he doesn't have ult, he doesn't have a way to get out of any of this crowd control. And as we look through the replay, watch how decisive these guys are in their ability to turn, right? Like, they get it down to half. They know that they can try and burn this, but they haven't had a great success record actually finalizing a lot of these objectives. And instantly, as soon as you see Fizzy go in, the rest of the team commits everything they need to, find two members, and then it's like, all right, well, now that the threat's gone, even though Sasuke's had some pretty cool Baron steals, this time he doesn't have a Jinx Rocket. He only has the W, which doesn't do anywhere near as much damage. They go up to an 8,000 gold lead, and I feel like this one might be on the books.
For the knockup, Fizzy grabs it on the Frost, gets the stun as well, but not going to find too much else after that. Now it is time for the Baron-empowered push. You have Haunter over in that bot lane. Kind of rotating back and forth is going to be TSMA as they look to take control of the jungle of Winthrop and pretty much starve out all the resources, get this jungle behind, get this entire squad behind, and look to close this out quite soon. But you still got a couple of inner towers you got to deal with, so not exactly going to get to the base just yet.
Yeah, and we're seeing that Winthrop actually devoting multiple members into the mid lane, where they might try and find Haunter and get the first turret in the mid lane, but they're sacrificing a lot. We saw something similar to this in the Revival series. This wasn't good.
We've seen this before, Joshi. Winthrop giving up their base for something that can be considered minor, but they are going to find Haunter. It's still, I don't know if you would call this worth if you're losing your base in the process. And Sasuke does get a kill. Scatter the Weak is not going to find him, but that's an inhibitor give up. You got a tower on the top side, you got a kill. I can't see this being worth in any other way.
Well,
this is a problem that seems to plague Winthrop.
They get 3 turrets as well from that. This is actually pretty okay. They don't They don't quite get 3 turrets. They do get 2 turrets and a kill out of that. So they actually get a lot of gold. Notice that they've gained 2,000 gold off of that. It was not a significant power play for the side of TSM Academy, and I believe as the number on the top side, you see it's hovering around 200 gold advantage that they picked up from that. That is not anything, right? They lose his bottom inhibitor, but they're already going to be spending time in the bottom side of the map anyway because this dragon is coming up, but they're not there first, and Kenji is probably just going to die.
Oh, Kenji comes in with the hook, takes the unleashed power, but now the attention is on to the cow as Fizzy has to flash away. The teleport comes through from Hybrids, just wanting to get the autos in, but there's the knockup, there is the stun, there is the crowd control, there is the pain delivered from Sasuke, able to take down the support of TSMA, and now some priority for Winthrop as they are 5 units strong, but take a look at the base. Super minions are coming in, so Winthrop have to be decisive and they have to be quick if they're going to grab this. Now Haunter over the wall, Frost Force is starting to get low, will go for able to grab it, Bobbit flashes forward, burns his splash, but doesn't get the steal. Frost Force trying to get some more damage in, but now it's time to call for a retreat. Winthrop Gonna look to back out of this fight. Sasuke getting a little bit more CS, realizing that the breath of TSMA is right on his neck. So he will be able to get out. He will be able to get to safety. And somehow, Winthrop, they're able to get a kill. They're able to get Dragon, but they lose part of their base in it. They needed to be quicker, and that is a rough situation for Winthrop to be in.
I really like the plays that Winthrop are going for. They are not orthodox. You do not just give up an inhibitor, but it's actually taking TSM Academy by surprise because of how unorthodox it is. They don't know how to respond to it because they don't see it, right? Like, who would go for that kind of play? It turns out it's Winthrop, but they're actually in a spot where they might be able to win.
Here we go. Ultimatum comes out. You're looking to try and get the backline, but the instant retreat. Shockwave on to 3. It's not going to continue the team fight. Sasuke scoots forward, but doesn't feel comfortable. Neither does the rest of Winthrop as they choose to back out. But this game is on a knife's edge. It's going back and forth with the gold lead so heavily in favor of TSMA, but Winthrop will not lie down.
They won't, but they're going to continue losing more. As long as TSM is continuing to play this standard League of Legends, they are finding advantages. You see Hanser and Cody-san super rich in this game, and Hybrids and Frostforest still lagging behind. They aren't able to find the same kind of assassinations into the backline that you might normally expect, but Frostforest trying to find a way in, a little bit cheeky there, but is going to get pushed away, and as TSM corral the members of Winthrop, it becomes harder and harder for Winthrop to try and find plays on the rest of the map, but crucially, 3 dragons in their inventory. If they find the next one in 3 minutes, if they can survive for 3 minutes, that they can go for a 50-50 on that, suddenly they have tools to survive all of the burst that TSM Academy are going to be trying to have in this game, and the Moonstone Renewer on Babbitt means that he's not going to be doing the same kind of damage later on. He's definitely relying on his other members. So, you know, I don't want to say Winthrop is favored, but they have outs. That's not something we were expecting to say when we look at how large of a gold lead TSM have been able to build up for themselves.
Even though they do have outs with that Dragon condition, what's coming up sooner is going to be the Baron, and what's not coming up soon enough is going to be that inhibitor, and it's in the bot side. So it's going to be a lot of attention to the bot side. Hybrids will not have teleport available, so he has to clear out as much as he can before he heads over towards that Baron area. Otherwise, it's completely forfeit to TSM.
See what they end up doing. This is the kind of time, right, like a couple seconds before, that you potentially look for these fights while people aren't entirely set up. And you see Sword and Cody-san backing, but not doing so on Vision, so it's not something that Winthrop do know, but we can definitely look for opportunities. If you find Lilia out by herself, she, you know, buys a little bit of time with the stasis, but it's not going to be enough time for the rest of the team to show up. And Hybrids, even though he's relatively poor, he still is at 2 items at this point. He still might have the damages start bursting through people like Sword and Cody-san, and naturally, with the true damage in his kit, he is going to be surprisingly relevant in some of these fights.
One more wave of super creeps, and then the inhibitor will be respawned, so a little bit of reprieve coming out for Winthrop, as they are able to get some control back into this game. But my eyes are still going to be on that Baron. Hybrids cannot be there for too long, and TSMA, they want to punish it. They're going deeper and deeper into the jungle of Winthrop. They're going to get as much vision as they can, as much control as they can, and play around this Baron, see if they can get Winthrop to fall for the same trap again.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? You hit the Baron to either turn or burn, and they were able to turn super effectively last time, but as they start to clear out the vision, Winthrop will have the teleport coming up from Hybrids relatively soon, and there are a couple of spots where he can look to try and find a flank, find access to the backline, and allow Doxa to find a shockwave onto important members, but they are getting pushed in. TSM know that they haven't had the best success rate with some of these neutral objectives when they actually go for these full-on fights. Instead, just trying to pressure the members at Winthrop away. They're prioritizing this Dragon coming through, and Winthrop, you know, if they had an opportunity to trade and pick up the Ocean Soul for themselves, they would definitely take it. But Hybrids, now's an opportunity. He's going to be backing and teleporting back to fight, and look at all these places he can look to TP and find flanks when he's back.
He did stop his recall, so now choosing to walk in. I wonder if it's an econ thing. He can't make any major purchases, or he thinks his fight's going to be too soon. We'll find out in just a moment. As the hook goes in, it's
Okay.
landing onto Fizzy. The Cow looking to turn this one around onto Doxa, who flashes away. Still a lot of damage on the Fizzy, a lot of damage on the Frost Force. All meanwhile, who has to use the Onslaught of Shadows to get out. But the sleep onto Kenji buys some time by going golden. Hybrids jumps in, and so does Saskio. Going after the support. You'll able to find one kill. Fizzy backs off, but now Dox is getting chased by Haunter. Gets stunned by Haunter, but Sword gets ran down by Frost. Here comes another headbutt pulverized. Fizzy finds it, but Hybrids will get found by Cody's son. A kill for kill. Saskio still alive. This is going all over the place. Only Haunter and Cody's son remain. He tries to find it, but the double kill comes out from Cody's son. Just barely able to grab him in time now. Saskio solo. It will be the ace. TSMA with a very, very split fight, able to slowly tear apart Winthrop and take the team fight win.
Oh my god, back and forth, and at the end of it, Frost Force was able to find a couple of avenues in, but it wasn't enough. Cody's son playing that team fight so well. Look at the damage numbers coming up for the 80 carries. Both Saskio and Cody's son absolutely huge, but with members of TSM Academy dying earlier, that means they respawn earlier. That means they can go to the Baron, and Frost Force can't be there to try and steal. This should be a huge win for TSM Academy as they end up getting both neutral objectives.
Can't you just steal it? Just steal it, Kenji.
Just steal it. Just steal it.
Take a look at that replay of that last fight, because that was a very, very hectic fight. There was action going off all over.
Yeah, it was not a consistent battle lines thing like we often see. Frost Force is in a 1v1 off on one side. Fizzy is off by himself. Babip almost dies, right? Like, it's hard to know what is going on during this fight. The communications are going to be so difficult to follow the entire time. And both 80 carries effectively able to free hit almost the entire time. So now, eventually, Frost Force comes back in, Haunter finds Dox off on the side, and it starts to simplify as pieces start getting taken off the board, and Saskio and Cody's son so low, but the important thing is the richest member on the map, Haunter, is still alive. He's able to find his way back into the team fight, and when you still have your queen, it doesn't matter when there's no other pieces left for Winthrop.
Now TSM starting to posture up towards this bottom side because it is time for the Baron power play. Getting pressure onto these minions. There's an exposed inhibitor bot side, so they'll be happy to continue pushing that lane. We still have the defense of Fizzy as well. And yeah, it's just open season now. Haunter will be the only one late, but he does have teleport. It's not the biggest steal. He's not there right here, right now, but still, you can see those cannon creeps. They are a menace. Wailing away at the inhibitor. Inhibitor's not going to fall just yet. TSM still continuing with the siege.
Yeah, it's tough, right, for Winthrop. You know, teleport does take a couple of seconds before somebody is able to arrive and really have impact on the game. And I think they might have the damage to burst out Sword or Cody's son if they're a bit slow to react, or if they aren't able to dodge the fear from Frost Forest, because Doxa does a lot of damage at this point, but instead they're just looking at the mid lane, and Haunter is not particularly phased by this attack.
Yeah, he's a tanky boy. He takes that charge on the chin and just doesn't even care. Straight for the inhibitor. Haunter's going to start setting up the autos on the hybrids and gets him down to half health before a team fight even breaks out. Inhibitor number 2 down. Now the defense of the century will have to be pulled off by Winthrop if they want to stay in this game, but this looks handily in favor of TSMA. Nexus is now exposed. Hybrids goes in for the backline, and here comes the last 9. They're going after Sword. Frost is getting way too low. Onslaught of Shadows onto Cody's son, but Frost will fall. Hybrids will fall, and the rest of Winthrop will start to fall as well. One more scatter of the week will do it, and Saskio joins his team. TSMA, they take game number 1 of this best of 3 series.
Man, that was a lot of fun to watch, right? We had so much action to start. We saw some really cool plays coming in from Winthrop at TSM Academy. They played standard League of Legends perfectly. They got the lead. They read exactly what Frost Force and Kenji were trying to do consistently, and because they were able to rein in all the things this collegiate team was trying to do, they were never able to find a real lead on the red side. And TSM Academy showing that they don't need to make these big plays that we've been knowing Haunter and Sword for, but it's been making them have some very exciting moments, but moments that can give them opportunities to give the game back over. Play standard, allow Cody's son to do his job, and this rest of the series should be rather smooth sailing.
And this looked like a match where both teams had very, very clear game plans. You saw it right away from Winthrop when they focused on the whole Camille topside stuff. But TSMA, it's not just about their game plan, it's about being able to read the enemy, and they read exactly what Frost was going to do. I don't know if they were watching the game yesterday where they saw the unorthodox pathing coming out of Frost and knew that he would try and do something early, but Bip, excellent job on being able to catch his jungler and just stop those spots that Winthrop were going for to find their leads.
Yeah, and they played very cleanly around the neutral objectives too once they started contesting them. There's never a question if Winthrop would realistically have a chance to try and steal away some of these objectives. They were always there. They made sure the jungler was dead. They made sure Doxa was pushed away. They made sure that they were going to turn off the objective instead of just trying to burn it down and coin flip it. So this is a version of TSM Academy that we haven't gotten to see very much, and I hope we can get to see more of it because this is good League of Legends that they're playing.
This is really, really good League of Legends. That's what I can say. And this match, kind of living up to the hype as we did the early game chaos, we did the late game chaos, and Winthrop, they are going to fight tooth and nail. Let's see if they can make it a series. We are going to throw it over a short break. When we return, actually, no break. The desk is ready to break down that game for Winthrop versus TSM Academy.